Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of New Album Spotlight, the show where I give you guys a review of something new in the progressive rock space and recommend it to you, something I've been enjoying. Sometimes they're more obscure releases that I want to bring more wide attention to, and sometimes it's just me giving my thoughts on some of the biggest prog albums that are coming out that people are talking about, and that's the case today. This is the buzziest, biggest prog album that's come out recently, and this is Steven Wilson's The Harmony Codex. Steven Wilson has become somewhat of a legendary modern prog figure who started with the band Porcupine Tree. They had a really strong career, going through many different styles throughout the run, from a more psychedelic Pink Floyd type style, moving into a little bit more pop-tinged prog music, and then finally embracing a little bit more of a metal influence into their later albums. Of course, they reconvened for Closure Continuation recently as well, but Steven Wilson went off to do his own solo career and has had an illustrious career by himself, doing some incredible work with albums like The Raven That Refused to Sing and Hand Cannot Erase, and more recently with The Future Bites, which got a little bit of criticism, especially from the prog community, because it leaned heavier on some of his more pop influences. But I'm a big fan of Steven Wilson. I think he's an artistic genius. He has really inspired me in a lot of ways, and so I'm always willing to take the ride with him through thick and thin, and I love The Future Bites and what he was doing there. When I fall in love with an artist, I'm willing to follow them into whatever direction they choose. You know, they're the visionary, not me, and I want them to follow their muse in the directions that they feel most inspired by. And I felt that that's what The Future Bites was Steven Wilson going in a direction that he felt inspiration from. He loves this 80s pop and synth work stuff that he explored there, some electronica elements and whatnot, and put the prog a little bit behind him for that release, but embraced this new style, and it sounded really fantastic. And as always, Steven Wilson has some of the best production in the business. You know, it just sounds pristine and beautiful. He's actually produced a lot of different records throughout his career, and he's been remastering and remixing a lot of classic prog records, and they always sound so perfect and pristine when he's done with them. So he's a wizard in the studio, as well as an incredible songwriter and performer. So I'm just happy to have him here. And I think the Harmony Codex is one of his strongest statements yet as an artist, because it just is him at his core, embracing everything that he loves in music. And to me, it's a great culmination of everything that's come before it. You know, it's a culmination of some of that psychedelia, Pink Floyd, electronica type stuff that he was doing in early Porcupine Tree records. There's some of the more pop-tinged flavors to some of the tracks, like what he was doing on stuff like Lightbulb Sun and Stupid Dream era. There's more of that jazzier prog that he was doing on The Raven, like in Luminol. You know, there's some of that crazy instrumental jazz type prog that he does so well. And there's even moments of The Future Bites with some more electronica 80s style pop work on this record as well. It's all melded into this really fascinating stew that I think is done really fascinatingly well. And it's just a swirling cornucopia of sound. It's like ear candy to hear all these different production tricks and these sounds come to the forefront. And there's so many layers, so many gorgeous elements to uncover on repeat listenings. It's just a fantastic work that I'm just really taken by. And I just love the artistry of it, you know. Maybe not all of this is my personal favorite style of music. You know, I'm not typically as into the electronica type elements and the looped beats and things like that. Not quite my favorite style of music. I like the more organic nature of real drums and guitar and bass, and you know, having more of a rockier element and more of a heavier mentality. But I love Steven Wilson's artistry and his songwriting skills and the way he's able to weave these different styles together and create something new and have these gorgeous soundscapes. I really have fallen in love with this style and sound, and what I appreciate about him as an artist is that he expands my mind. You know, things that I previously wouldn't have listened to or wouldn't have cared for, I'm finding new appreciation for, because he's doing it in such a gorgeous way and combining it with elements of things that I do in fact really love. So going through the track list, I'm going to talk about each song a little bit and my impressions of them, but really this is a sonic journey that needs to be heard to really understand what's going on. It's hard to describe a lot of the music in a way that really conveys what the journey of the album is. but I'll do my best here and see what I can describe throughout the track list. It starts with Inclination, which starts with some heavy electronica, really sonic treat just right off the bat, just really interesting sounds, sounding really pristine and interesting. A little bit of a jazz influence mixed in as well as it continues. Very modern and soundscapey, like a bit like a musical art piece, just really interesting sounds that get your mind thinking and spark creativity. And then there's a pause, a really interesting extended break of silence before Wilson's vocals come in for the other half of the piece. And it's still backed by those electronic sounds throughout. There's some well-recorded piano as well that comes into the mix. Some beautiful harmony vocals, supplemented by those electronic beats and an art pop type feel, like an evolved form, like I was saying, of what Wilson was doing on the Future Bites, but a little bit more refined and a little bit proggier. Really interesting start to the album. What Life Brings is a beautiful track, beautiful opening with strumming guitar and shimmering keys with Wilson's characteristic vocals. This is probably one of the most traditional characteristic tracks of Steven Wilson on the record, what you'd expect from him in that more poppier acoustic prog style vein, stuff that you'd hear from like Stupid Dream and Lightbulb Sun era and throughout his career. It's just beautiful to me. I love the style of his work. A dreamier atmosphere, some great guitar soloing. Feels like a mixture between some Pink Floyd type atmosphere with some Beatles-esque type harmonies and melodies as well. So many great layers of sound, and I love the like last minute with those la-da-da type vocals. True ear candy. It's just beautiful to listen to. Really enjoy this one a lot. Economies of Scale brings back that electronica style element with a lot of those somewhat bleeps and bloops that you'd expect from that electronica style before you get some beautiful piano breaks with Wilson's vocals coming in, some beautiful haunting female vocals wail into the background. There's an addition of some acoustic guitar with shimmering chords and Wilson's harmony vocals on top. Just a beautiful pastiche of sound. Another really great shorter track here before we get into Impossible Tightrope, which starts with some beautiful orchestration with some great strings and some light jazzy piano. You add some guitars and drums on top of that for a build and intensity in the music. Some bluesy acoustic guitar takes the center stage for a minute before we get into some more jazz fusion style workouts with screaming saxophone. There's some atmospheric sounds like you're in the middle of a beach or some kind of sea, and you get some beautiful piano chords and vocalizations on top of it, and it comes back with some more energy and some almost choir-like style feel of vocals with some busy jazzy drumming. So it gets into some really funky directions as well with some great guitar licks and rhythms, killer jazzy keyboard solo that's extended towards the end. Just a really great collection of sounds in this mostly instrumental piece from a lot of different avenues of his work, taking some of that jazz focus, some proggy stuff, melding it into this extended instrumental that just sounds beautiful and has so many highlights to it. Rock Bottom is a chance for Ninette Tiab's vocals to shine. She has these husky vocals that really work well in the piece. You get a bit of a duet style feel with Steven also taking some lead vocals. A little bit darker, more distorted sounds at the beginning, some off-kilter music as well, but powerful vocals, gorgeous. I really love Ninette's voice, and it's just fantastic here as usual. And you get a great bluesy style guitar solo towards the end as well. So a really great track, another highlight. Beautiful Scarecrow is more leaning into that electronica sound with some vintage keys in the background, a little bit of a darker feel with some affected vocals, but once again some great pop ear candy similar to something from the Future Bites, maybe a darker King Ghost or something like that. Really beautiful strings lead to a heavier, more intense electronica beat towards the end. Just a really interesting pastiche of electronica and pop and some prog sprinkled through that makes for an incredible listen. The Harmony Codex, the title track, is this extended ambient soundscape that just goes into a certain space with these shimmering sounds and this almost sci-fi aesthetic. And usually this style of music would feel a bit too repetitive or too boring because it stays in that lane throughout the piece. But they switch it up just enough to give me some interest throughout the piece. And it's just so beautiful and gorgeous, the melodies that are enveloping you. And there's some soft spoken vocals as well that are somewhat soothing and lean more into this almost sci-fi type concept. It's an ethereal journey, really expansive, really majestic, and full of wonder. And it just really takes you away. You can just close your eyes and listen to this music and let it transport you into a new dimension, really. It's just a fascinating soundscape and a beautiful piece of work that is the center point of the album. Just a beautiful piece that really showcases some of Wilson's greatest instincts as a songwriter. Just a beautiful piece. Time Is Running Out is another more standard Steven Wilson track, I think. Some beautiful piano melodies with Wilson's vocals on top, adding some good beats and a guitar strumming. Great vocal harmonies, once again, some earworm features as well throughout the track. A heavenly guitar solo shines amongst this musical splendor. Just another wonderful track that Steven Wilson wrote that I really enjoy. Actual Brutal Facts starts with some darker guitar with bass lines and soon erupts into some of those electronica beats, some affected dark talking style vocals over electronica and some keys. This one's probably my least favorite piece of the record, just my own personal taste. I know a lot of people love this one, and I think it has a lot of fans for its style, and I really respect and appreciate it for what it does, but it really does lean into that heavier electronica style, and those talking, darker, affected vocals aren't quite my thing as much. I like the more beautiful singing, the more harmony vocals that Wilson does, those more Beatles-esque harmonies. But it's another fascinating piece that features a really interesting guitar solo towards the end as well, and some really interesting soundscapes that once again just capture the imagination and make for an interesting flavor to the record. And then we end with another highlight track of the record, one of the best ending tracks of any Steven Wilson record. This is Staircase, which goes through a lot of different moods throughout the piece and is somewhat of a culmination of everything that's come before it. Skittering keys and electronic drums provide a backbeat for Wilson's thoughtful vocals at the start. Gets more intense with some stronger drums and some killer guitar work. We get this lush sound as we get to the middle of the piece with some orchestration in the background and these great vocalizations with a strong beat behind it. We get a sick bass part that comes out of nowhere where you suddenly get this tasty bass funk solo, which is really fun, and a great combination with the electronica elements that are behind it. And we get a bit of a lighter touch on the drums with some beautiful keys and luscious sounds, feeling like a culmination, like I said, of everything that's come before it. Adding in those spoken word sections similar to what we heard on the title track as well. Some spacey sounds behind it. And we get this ending with this like feel of gentle rain and majestic synths, and give a glorious close to the record. Just really a beautiful work, all in all. Just so many different inspiring things happening here. And like I said, throughout the record, there's just so many interesting elements that grab your ear, these interesting little tricks and quirks and, things that just sound beautiful and majestic and interesting. And it's just such a creative statement by Steven Wilson. I do think this is one of his masterpiece statements. I know a lot of people are maybe not feeling this record because it really embraces that electronica element, doesn't really go back to the well of pure progressive rock that he was doing with The Raven and Hand Cannot Erase. But if you open your mind a little bit to something a bit different, to me this is what's truly progressive. A lot of artists are a little bit regressive in the way that they just celebrate their past and do things that have already been done before by other artists. I like that stuff. I think it can be done well, and you can add enough of your own stamp on it and influence. But what Steven Wilson is doing here is creating something really different and new and fresh and exciting that's maybe taking influences from disparate places and placing them together, but doing it in such a way that's so creative and so artistic and creates for just an incredible sonic journey throughout that can capture your imagination and bring you to a new level in your way of thinking. And to me, that's what the best artist can do, is expand your mind, bring new sounds and new flavors to your palette that you never had heard before, and introduce you to them in a whole new way. And that's what Steven Wilson has done for me with this record. I feel like my mind's been expanded and that I've learned a bit more about my taste in music and have opened new avenues in my brain. So I'm grateful for this record. I think it's a must listen for all fans of progressive rock. May not be your style all the way through, but I think it's still worth pushing through and finding these little hidden gems and really listening in for the production, for the things that he's doing in the sound design. All of that stuff is just brilliantly done and is a showcase for one of the best artists working today. So thank you guys for joining me for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments how you feel about this record. I'd be fascinated to know how you feel. And I thank you guys for joining me on this journey and in this discussion of this album. So thank you guys, and hopefully I'll see you in a future video here on the channel. Bye, everybody.